All right, part 2 for module 5. We just finished the concatenate stuff, and we're going to go on to count if, sum if, average if, count ifs, sum ifs, average ifs with plural. So the first thing I'm going to say is this is all for ifs, if what you're doing, depending on what's going to happen here. And I'm going to get rid of some of these extra cells here. So for example, what you want to do for a count if. Okay. For a count if, you want to count certain cells if a certain specific condition is met. So we're going to start with equals count if. Counts the number of cells within a range that meets a given condition. We specify the condition. So if we're going to start with this, count if, open up a set of parentheses, it looks for a range and a criteria. Again, a lot of times when I do this, I tell you guys always go to this f of x button. It opens it up and it explains things to you if you're unsure. The range of cells from which you want to count non-blank cells. So where am I trying to count? Well, maybe I want to count, I don't know, how many nurses there are. Okay? So maybe I would be counting out of this whole set here. Okay? Out of this whole set, my specific criteria that I care about is nurse. Okay? And the nice thing about this thing is before I even pressed OK, it told me whether or not I was going to have an error or not and how many I'm going to have. And it says there's 13. So I could take its word for it and say there are 13 inside of here. That's fine. I could also go inside of here. Oh, before I go on, see how it adds in the quotes on its own? You need quotes in here, so whether you add it or not is a different story. However, if I typed it inside of here, and I did this positions, and I put comma, and I typed in nurse, it will not add those quotes automatically, so it's going to say 0. So I need to have whatever's in quotes is what's getting checked. Okay? So that's another nice reason why if you want to use this, it will automatically add those and you're all set to go. Okay? So it's going to count all the nurses. If I want to change nurses to lab technicians, it says there's 9 of those. Okay? And again, if I want to go to this and I want to double check and say I don't want lab technicians, I want to check how many doctors there are. And it says 0. But there's a doctor right here. There's a doctor right here. What did I type that's different? I put an S on doctors. I pluralized it. That is not the same thing as what is in this cell. So it will not work. Okay? Also, so if I get rid of that, now there's 7. Also, when I'm going through that, if I'm in this f of x button, if I typed in, say, doctor with a space, it won't work because there's a space after doctor. Sorry. Does that make sense? So be careful. So sometimes what you want to do is if you see something that you know you want to use, some things that we do is we reference a particular cell. Like we want to count all these things as long as it is a doctor. I know I didn't spell it wrong because I used it from the formula. Okay? Or if I want, not I-14, but let's say I want administrator. I type it. I don't have to type it so I don't make any mistakes. And I count how many there are. Okay? So same goes through for sum if. Whoops. Sum if and average if. Okay? Equals sum if. Now the only difference between this is sum if and average if needs an extra piece of criteria. It needs a spot that you're going to add. So not only does it have to look where you're going to find the pieces for your criteria, your specific conditions that you want, but you also have to tell what do you want to add as well. So we're going to open this up and say the range. Where am I looking for my specific criteria? I could do the exact same thing. I'm going to look in position again. So position, comma, and now you can see it's also in the formula bar here too. My criteria, that's what's bold. My specific criteria, I want to know about nurses, comma, And now it gets into the third part, the sum range. What do you want me to add up once I find all the nurses? Well, let's add up their salary. Okay. Close the parentheses. As you can see, I just closed it here. And press enter. And we get this. So I'm going to make it $signs here. So all the nurses, I'm going to change this back to nurses too. Let's see, where was a nurse? Okay, so of the 13 nurses, we have a sum of almost a little over $1 million for all the 13 nurses. If I find the average if, well, I want to find it's an average if you are a nurse. What is the average salary? So equals, again, average if, open up your set of parentheses. I'm going to look for if you're a nurse. So I'm looking in the position. My criteria is nurse, comma, and I want you to add up the salaries and give me the average of these things. Close my parentheses and enter. So the average salary is this. And now we could have done that. Actually, take that divided by 13, and we should get the same number, right? But the beauty of this is, this formula I had here, I had to find out how many there were. I had to add them all up, and then I had to divide. There's 3 steps to get it this way. This thing, if these don't even exist, I could still find the average. It doesn't matter. So I don't need the other pieces. Does that make sense? That's the beauty of this. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to say is count ifs. Sum ifs. Average ifs with plurals. All 3 of these are now plurals. So count if. I'm going to say a nurse and I don't know, Pawtucket. Okay, that's what I want to know about. Count if you're a nurse and you're from Pawtucket. Pawtucket, sorry, excuse me. So equals count ifs. Now the S is number of cells specified by a given set of conditions or criteria. So there's more than one specific criteria or condition you are looking for now. So if you open up the parentheses, again, I recommend opening this for the first few times you do it until you get used to it. This is changing things, okay? Criteria number 1. The first thing I'm looking for is nurses. So position. I'm going to grab that for the first part, and the specific criteria about any of those things that I care about nurses. It says there's 13 of them. For the second set of criterias, I care about the city being Pawtucket. So I'm going to grab all of the cities. And then from all those cities, right now there's nothing because I don't know what I'm looking for, right? I'm looking specifically for Pawtucket. Okay? And right now it says 0. So Pawtucket was probably a bad city to choose from. Let's see. What has... Oh, Fall River. I'll just go with Fall River. So let's go with Fall River. Okay? So I will change Pawtucket. Now, see, the nice thing is this is color-coded. This is green. This is green. So I know this is the one I have to change to Fall River. Doesn't matter which one. So there are 3 nurses in Fall River. And in fact, Fall River, nurse 1, Fall River, nurse, Fall River, nurse. So it works out really well. Same thing, sum ifs equals sum ifs. Open up your dialog box. I recommend this. This one is different. Sum ifs and average ifs. Now, last time when we did this, I'll escape out of this for a second. When we did this, we had the criteria, the range, the criteria, and then we have the sum, what we wanted them to add at the very, very end. This time is different. This time when we have it plural, it's going to ask for it in the very beginning. Sum range, what do you want me to add up? And then give me the criteria that you want me to look for. Okay? So the sum range, I'm going to add up all the salaries. Put a comma. Now I'm looking for criteria range number 1. My first criteria, I'm still looking for nurses. So position is my criteria range number 1. Oops, here we go. Looking for nurses. The specific criteria in here is the nurse. Comma for the second one to place it over. Criteria number 2, I'm looking for the city. In the cities, put a comma. Now I'm in criteria number 2. Not the range anymore, but the actual criteria. I want the criteria to be Fall River. Close my parentheses. And the sum for all the nurses in Fall River is 243,000. So a nurse in Fall River, 80,000, almost 90,000. 80 and 90 is about 170,000. And another nurse, 75. So 170 plus 75 is around the $245,000 mark. So that works out pretty well for us. So what's the average of this? We can do in our head about 80, about 90, about 75. So 80, 80, 85, 82, 83,000 or so, right? 81,000 probably. So if you go to the average ifs, we do equals average ifs, again with plural. The very first thing we want to average range. What are we going to take the average of? All the salaries. Okay. Comma, what is my first criteria? Again, I want nurses, so I look for the position first. Then I look specifically for nurse for my criteria. My criteria range 2. Where am I going to look for the second thing? It's going to be in cities. And inside of the cities, my specific criteria that I care about is going to be Fall River. Okay? Close parentheses. And we said about 81,000, which is about right. So this is how you're going to do these specific pieces. And you could, the nice thing about this is count ifs. When you see this thing in an open up dialog box, if I'm in here, it says for criteria range number 3, and it'll keep going and going and going as long as you fill these things in. Okay, criteria number 3, 4, 4, 5, 5. You could have a ton of criterias in these things. It depends on how much data you want to pick out. But it is definitely a nice thing. And it's the same thing happens for sums and averages. If you do this, again, criteria 6. I'm already at criteria 13 already. So you can have a ton of different criteria inside of this piece. So it's a nice piece about this. And again, I don't have to do nurses. We could do, let's see, lab technicians and Fall River. So I would change this. So instead of nurse, now I'm doing red, right? Look at the nurse in red. I want lab technician. There are 2 of them. I'm going to go inside of here and find nurse is purple. So I find the purple one. And I want lab technician. $108,000, so divided by 2 should be 54. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Nurse is purple. I find the purple one here. That's the nice thing about the color codes. Lab technicians. Enter, and there's your 54,000 there. So that's count if, count ifs, some ifs, average if, average ifs. These are adding averages, counting on specific criteria that you are making and telling the computer to do. That pretty much wraps up everything from 5, Mod 5. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Watch the videos, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks.